Its second and last day today, business, Labour and government have agreed to work together on a number of initiatives to combat the sky-high unemployment rate and lift growth. Now, for more on the summit, we across live to our business reporter, Nompumelo Siziba, who is in Midrand. Nompu, very good morning to you once again. Well, before we can go into what we can expect today, let's reflect on what happened yesterday. What was left on the table?
Thanks very much, Blaine. Well, a lot was left on the table. So the President announced that agreements have been reached by the various stakeholders, that is business, labour, civil society and the government. And basically, there are lots and lots of agreements that cut across sectors. So the financial sector, for example, committed to spending some 100 billion rand on black businesses over the next 5 years. That's one example. There were commitments made by executives that they're prepared to take salary cuts over the interim period and even sacrifice dividends that are due to them when they're dividend payouts in order to, just keep some money in the kitty and rather than retrenching someone, perhaps using that money to still keep people in work. So those kinds of commitments were made. The government is going to be working with agribusiness and other banks in order to be able to allow people to get long-term loans at preferential rates, which will be very helpful, in terms of them managing their cash flow, still managing to be viable and all those sorts of things. At the retailer level, for example, many of them, and their names were mentioned, Edcon is the one that sticks in my mind, they're committed to pushing local procurement. So instead of sourcing from overseas, spending a lot more of their resources on local goods in order to promote local jobs and, of course, local business. The President really emphasizing that the consumer has a role to play as well, that we should go out there and buy South African goods, because obviously if we do that, we create a market for those goods and people can produce in South Africa for the South African market, because as we know, we are very heavily dependent on imports from overseas, and perhaps we need to start believing more in our retailers and the people who actually produce things at a raw level. The President also foresaw that there's going to be a massive market for our horticultural sector, saying that by 2030 we could have lifted the amount of revenue that we can get quite substantially. So there are lots of areas where he was talking that are going to address short-term issues, medium and long-term. He obviously also said that this is just a 2-day summit, but that's not all. This is going to be a continuum. What's going to happen is that there's going to be a setting up of a monitoring panel, a jobs committee, a presidential jobs committee, which is going to look at the progress of job creation. A number that's come up is that some additional 275,000 jobs could be created as a result of these cooperative efforts made here at the Jobs Summit. Blaine?
Okay, so we know that the proposal is, the package of measures is more than 200,000 jobs created a year. What sort of sense are you getting from those who have attended? Is it optimism or cautious distrust?
Well, yeah, I think it's a mixture, but there's more optimism. People saying it seems to be more concrete now because people have been working towards this. It's not like people are attending this for the first time with no ideas. Ideas have been put down on paper, commitments have been made, and concrete ones at that, things that can be measured, and there's going to be a monitoring team that's going to be ensuring that people are actually fulfilling the targets that need to be measured. So there seems to be some optimism, and Blaine, frankly, can we get any lower than we have as a country in terms of our unemployment rate?
Yeah, indeed. With regards to what people are saying, what stakeholders they are saying about corruption, about policy uncertainty, and what sort of impact it will have on job creation, what sort of conversations, what sort of narratives are being discussed?
No, that's been a massive conversation. The fact that state capture and general corruption has really eroded a lot of gains that could have been made in the economy. When you exercise corruption and it becomes part of the social fabric, it takes away, particularly from the poor, it takes away from the opportunity to create jobs. When people fiddle on tenders and, we hear about people getting tenders worth hundreds of millions of rands, and there's been no delivery of the underlying project that they were supposed to deliver on. So what do? They chow it, buy fancy cars, buy fancy houses. In the meantime, the project is not delivered, and the jobs that would have been created had that project been delivered, they're non-existent. So those sorts of things are fundamentally, have to be got rid of, because otherwise we just continue in this really negative virtuous circle. And they said that this has to be rooted out. And we are seeing, the state capture inquiry, we're seeing the SARS inquiry, we're seeing people being dealt with seemingly. We have to see what happens at the prosecutorial level, because we haven't really seen heads roll yet. But the momentum seems to be right. And if we don't fix corruption, the AG is always talking about it, then, all these plans, they're just going to come to nothing.
Nompu, thank you very much indeed for your reporting. Thank you. We will try to catch up with you a little later on. Nompumelo Siziba live for us in Midrand.